Hey friends, it's Michael Golzmane here, and I want to talk to you in this video a bit about religious programming as a limiting factor in our soul's evolution. So it may sound a little contradictory at first. You might think, well, isn't religion designed to connect us more to God or Spirit or Source or whatever name we might have for that transcendent presence that is often the pinnacle or the ultimate goal in religion? Well, I want you to take a little journey with me for a second back to envisioning the origins of various religions. So they often have a particular person who's the founder, or maybe eventually becomes the person upon which the religion is based. This person has a close connection with ultimate reality. You might call that God. I sort of use these words interchangeably. They have a close connection to this inner presence. They have what's called a realization of that presence. And that being may have written some things, may have had some followers, may have taught some things. And ultimately, all of these beings eventually taught that they were not really particularly unique, that they were not really to be followed or worshipped, but that the potential that they had developed within them was the potential in all of us, if we would just do X, Y, and Z. And typically, at least at a mystical level, a lot of the religious teachings point to a lot of the same things. So then what happens is what? The religious follower is often killed because the earth plane doesn't want to tolerate that kind of teaching, or they eventually die. The followers then organize the teachings into, well, I think this person said that, I think this person said that, and then the followers make it into a bunch of rules, an organization, a systematization, a literalization of the religious path. And then it becomes that anyone who follows those rules is then considered to be part of the religion or part of the following of that particular person. And what happens is that the followers of the original spiritual teacher may not have been at the same level of consciousness or of realization that the original spiritual teacher was at. And even the original spiritual teacher may have been at a relatively high level, but not at the highest, because there is no highest. They're simply continually growing and continually expanding. So oftentimes the organizations, the rule books, the holy books, the testaments, and various things that are written based on the teachings of the original founder are often filled with our own human projection. They're often codifications of what we believed the original teaching was, but the codification isn't the teaching, and nor is the following of the rule itself the spiritual path. The followers have made it into a set of thou shalts and thou shalt nots, when the following of that is an external manifestation, perhaps, of an external expression of what needs to be an internal reality. Ultimately, the following of these spiritual teachers, the following of these religions, ultimately cannot be just done by a bunch of external beliefs, by a bunch of mental ascriptions into certain sacred scriptures, by a bunch of external practices. It has to be an inner realization of the heart. And ultimately, the sort of dumbing down through human projection of the religious traditions cannot actually help people to activate into the consciousness of the original leader. Now, my own tradition in this present soul body reality has been Christianity. I was born into the Christian church. My mother, as a matter of fact, was a nun, literally a nun in the Catholic Church for about 8 years, several years prior to my birth. And I was raised in a very, very fundamentalist Christian community. So my orientation towards religion, spirituality, comes from that kind of background. Now, having kind of grown out of that tradition over the course of years, I've seen where that sort of tradition where it was supposed to be going, and where it's gotten caught up along the way, where it's stopped being about the inner realization and awakening of consciousness, and it started to become about the blind following of rules. And it's really become about, in many cases, this is true really for all religions, it's many cases become about a set of thou shalt and thou shalt nots, rules, and this results in wars, this results in all kinds of crazy ideas like excluding people, saying these people will not get into heaven, these people are going to hell. It can result in racism and sexism and all sorts of things, which were not really meant to be part of the original message at all, but that have become part of the lack of realization of the followers of the religion creating these rules. Now, why am I saying all this? Well, because if you think about our soul's history for a moment, now I believe in past lives. I certainly didn't when I was first going through my religious training. I certainly did not, but I think all of us at some level believe that, we have more to the story than just our physical life here. We've been around the block a few times, whether you want to call that subconscious or collective consciousness or past lives or soul's evolution, whatever you want to call it, it's okay. It doesn't really matter what you call it. So I believe that we've kind of been around the block a few times. And we've also experienced, those of us on a spiritual path now, like you and like me, have experienced many, many incarnations in which we have been strict adherents to various religions. This is the spirituality of yesteryear. We believe that oftentimes by becoming very committed to religion, oftentimes going into the celibate and monastic orders of the religions, that we were in fact finding God or finding spirit or finding ultimate reality, whatever you want to call that. This was what we could tolerate in terms of our development of consciousness at that time. This was the only path we knew. And so, based on that, we have often suppressed a tremendous amount of discordant beliefs about God. And when I mean God, I really mean life. God and life, to me, are synonyms. Our beliefs about God are our beliefs about life. If we believe that God is going to punish us, we also may believe that life is actually somehow against us in some way. If we believe that we're incurring the wrath of God somehow, we might believe that, again, life is against us, I have bad luck, life is punishing me, I can never make anything good happen. These types of beliefs are deeply within our subconscious. They're generally not in the conscious mind anymore for someone like you who'd be watching this video. You don't really believe in a punitive deity who's sending people to hell. I certainly don't believe that. However, the religious programming runs deep. For many people, we've had hundreds or thousands of incarnations where we have been part of discordant religious teaching. I've actually made it part of my spiritual research recently, again, in my own tradition, but this references all traditions. I have been looking at particular worship services in the Christian community and doing some spiritual dowsing, doing some checking in with spirit, with ultimate reality, after various worship services to see what are the things that are being created in the consciousness of the people who attended those services. We tend to think, these services, at best, they're innocuous, right? They might not be the ultimate blissful expression for each person, but they're certainly not harmful. Well, I don't know about that. I think on a social level, sometimes our religious spiritual practice can be positive. But on a spiritual, subconscious level, we often are creating a lot of discordant, continuously discordant, and limiting beliefs about life, beliefs about reality. And here's the thing. It wouldn't matter so much on a strictly religious perspective if we believed things that were sort of erroneous. If it didn't mean that our view on God is our view on life. And our view on God and life is largely subconscious and is largely predicated by our unresolved issues from our religious lifetimes. And these issues, when they compound on each other, what are some of these issues? Well, one is that you can't have God and money. That's a very common religious teaching, that you can either choose to be of this world and to have money and to be successful in life, have a career, make lots of money, have lots of things, or you can choose God, and you can't have both. So if that's deeply inculcated into the consciousness due to many lifetimes of that being beaten into you, you may find that at a subconscious level you sabotage one or the other of these principles when it comes to this lifetime. You may feel like, I can either be in meditation and be connected to my spiritual path, or I can kind of go out there and try to make a living and have money. It's very, very common for people on the spiritual path to feel like they have one or the other and they can't manifest both. It's actually still commonly taught that you're not supposed to have both in many religions today. This is completely absurd and it's completely erroneous, but it's not something that we can just consciously think, I'm going to think something differently now. If we have millions and millions of what we call vows of poverty, which we may have literally taken or figuratively taken in this or in many previous lifetimes. If we join a monastic order, for instance, even today in the world, you are required to take a vow of poverty, meaning that you will not own anything that belongs personally to you. Again, it stems from the belief that you can't have God and money. We may have taken vows of celibacy, vows of chastity in previous religious lifetimes, and that can be affecting our ability to attract a romantic partner now. That can also be affecting our ability to attract money, because celibacy and chastity very much affect the second chakra, which is all about money also, all about creativity as well. We may have taken vows of suffering, believing that if we just suffer enough here, then we're going to avert God's wrath in the afterlife. People still teach this today. As absurd as that teaching is, people still teach it. And even if you do not believe it, which I certainly do not believe it, at a deep level of your subconsciousness, you may be inviting suffering into your life based on past religious programming that teaches you that if you can just suffer enough now, then this external deity up in the sky is going to have mercy on you and is going to say, oh, Michael, you've suffered so much at your own hand. Well, I'm gonna help you now. I'm gonna give you that money you've been looking for. I'm gonna give you that health you've been looking for. A lot of these religious programmings and teachings also have affected our physical health. One example is those of us who have broken out of the religious paradigm in previous lifetimes. I mean, God forbid, right? Oftentimes, again, this is the creation of the ego when it comes to religion. Many times when we try to leave religions or question their authority, especially in previous lifetimes, we have been ostracized, excommunicated, or in some cases killed for that. People in the world are still have that today. If you don't believe in the dominant religion of the state, or in some tribalisms around the world, then you can be ostracized or at worst killed. This can deeply affect us because we associate violence with God at a subconscious level. Remember, all of this stuff is enfolded into the subconscious. It's another way of saying our soul records or our akashic records. It's not something that you consciously believe. You don't associate violence and death with God anymore at a conscious level. However, at a subconscious level, you may be avoiding actualization of your spiritual path, have fear about it, have fear of growing, have fear of surrendering, have fear of letting go and letting God, because this spiritual opening has been associated with you perhaps being killed in a previous lifetime. Now, if we've been killed, that's a very, very powerful effect on the physical body, obviously, from that lifetime. This may have ramifications for health issues in this lifetime. People don't think about that. A lot of times, issues that are considered incurable by the medical establishment have their roots in unresolved issues from past lifetimes. So if we start to look at the spiritual roots of why you might have a certain health condition now that seems incurable, we might take it back to religious lifetimes where perhaps you were breaking out of the tribe. You were saying, you know what, this religion is okay, but I really prefer my spiritual connection to be in nature. Or I prefer to be, the local medicine man or medicine woman. And people, man, it's cliche these days how the medicine woman of the tribe, who might be equated to the modern day midwife, for instance, was killed for that. Being a woman, being powerful, being connected spiritually, being connected with natural wisdom, that was not to be had by, again, the ego-based patriarchal religion of yesteryear. So there's a lot of stories here going on in the soul at a subconscious level. And what I want to bring this all back around to is the fact that our belief about God is really our belief about reality, with a capital R, our belief about life. And it's more than our belief about it, it's our connection to it. Our conscious mind is only like 1% at most of our total consciousness. We might say, oh yeah, I believe that life is for me, God is good. God, Spirit, Source is good, abundant, all for me, is promoting health in my being. We might have these affirmations in our being, but 99.9% of our consciousness may be enfolded in the subconscious based on our past life religious programming and may say, oh, no, you don't believe that. Once we can combine the clarity and the openness and the release of the subconscious programming and combine that with our present moment conscious understanding and affirmation that life is for me and not against me, that life loves me, that the natural state of abundance and health and joy and connection and forgiveness is the natural state of flow, is the natural state of being. We have an unbeatable punch here. We have an unbeatable collection of of consciousness at the conscious and subconscious level that can help us to be in the flow and be in rapport with manifesting health, abundance, vitality, positive relationships. That's what life, and I use the term God here again, that's what life or God is really all about. I like the definition that God is not a person, but God is a presence personified as us. God is a presence. God does not have an individual separate will from us. God simply is the presence of all fulfillment, all abundance, all joy. We have dumbed that down into a bunch of rules over the course of millennia of religious history, and it's time for us to dissolve those religious roots. I will say that religion is not necessarily a bad thing. I don't really believe in good or bad anyway, but religion is not a bad thing overall. What we want to get to, if we are of a particular religious persuasion, whether it's Christianity, whether it's Islam, whether it's Buddhism, whether it's anything else, Hinduism, one of my loves and connected places also, we want to be able to go into the mystical root of that path. All of the religious traditions have a mystical root. They have a place where they sort of all join, where all the surface level differences begin to dissolve, and you begin to say and see, oh, there's a mystical heart of this religion which is all about silence, it's all about presence, it's all about creating spiritual practice and activities in my being so that I can connect into that presence that really has no name at all. I'll leave you with what Lao Tzu said as the first aphorism of the Tao Te Ching. He said that the Tao that can be talked about is not the true Tao. I like substituting the word God for that, that the God that can be talked about is not the true God. The God of religion is not the true God. All of the religions. Because God is not a belief system, God is not a being, God is not a person. God is not something that can really be talked about at all. God is an experience of awakening that has to happen in each of us. And we can do that by clearing off our discordant religious programming, clearing off the vows that we've taken in previous lifetimes, religious vows, clearing off the harm that has been caused to us, the result of ego-based religious programming in previous lifetimes. As we clear that away, we come into a deeper understanding and a realization of connection with Source, connection with, you could use the word God still, totally fine, I use the word God all the time. You can use the word Spirit, the word Source, you can use the word Being, the word Presence. You begin to come into an inner awakening and a realization of that. And your life begins to work in accordance with those principles, which are abundance, flow, joy, inner peace, prosperity, harmonizing energy in relationships, increased amounts of health. So there's a lot for you to think about in this particular video, but I hope it gets you thinking a little bit about what do you believe about God at a conscious or subconscious level. Now, what you truly believe is manifest in your experience and in your results. It's not what's in your head, it's in your results. So your head may say one thing to you consciously, but if at a subconscious level there's all kinds of unresolved issues there, it's worth taking a look at to clear these issues so that your whole life can become the message of unconditional love that you've accepted and received yourself, and the message of unconditional love and service that we can spread to others. This is what ultimate healing to me really is all about. So friends, thank you for taking the time to watch this video. If you want to be in touch with me about this or any other topic, please feel free to click below this video if you're on YouTube now, and you'll see my website there. Drop me a message. If you think you might have some discordant religious programming or some things that are limiting your expression of life and love in any way, please feel free to get in touch with me. I'd love to have a check for you, do a check-in, and connect with you about that. So peace and blessings, friends. Take care, and I'll talk to you soon.